what's up, YouTube? It's Richie from Boston. Today's the 20th of August. It's 2018, and you are looking at the new website that I launched a couple of months ago with the help of a couple of website designers. There's still a few kinks in it that we're trying to work out, but we have the local contacts, we have the forum, so forth and so on. It's completely free to join. This is what you can use as an alternative to Facebook. Again, there's a few kinks in it, but it is what it is. You'll notice up here that I have one link, and according to the rules of Google, I'm not allowed to say what I'm using the pointer at right now because they're making this completely and totally illegal. Now, if you remember when about 3-4 years ago, I was covering the holistic doctors being killed left and right, and I got a lot of flack for that. It was unbelievable. It still continues to go on, but they don't want you to know about this. I currently use the natural soothing relieving balm because I've got a bad knee, and as opposed to taking opiates or anything else, I use this stuff and it works like a champ most of the time. I notice that the humidity kind of kicks my butt a little bit, but it is what it is. This video that's coming up right now is going to explain a lot of things that a lot of people don't understand, but it might show you how we ended up where we're at right now. Please like, share, and subscribe, or don't. Links will be in the description. Links are also on the website. Enjoy.
Right? It's crazy. But our students are inundated with that. When they go into a toy store or a clothing store or a bookstore or anywhere. Boys' books, girls' books, boys' stickers. It's ridiculous, right? So they have to know, like, as our job is, they have to think critically about that. So we can't burn all the books in the library that are reinforcing these gender stereotypes that we have to start using, and in our staff rooms as well, and on PA announcements, and in assemblies, when I cringe when people are still saying, good morning, boys and girls, today at, it's like, oh, really? So you can change that culture in your school.
When we talk about, whether it be kindergarten to grade 7, talking about home life and relationships between, your mom and your dad. Maybe this child has 2 moms, and maybe this child has 2 dads. It's the same thing. We're talking about relationships.
The way I approach these topics with early primary students often begins with a book. It starts with a story, for sure. It is in the curriculum for us to talk about family and family diversity, and that's a really natural way to talk about it. And at their age, 6 and 7, they're remarkably open and accepting if that's the tone that is set. So it's actually not as difficult as it seems, I don't think.
Be afraid to start with the younger grades. They are definitely ready to learn about, there aren't just 2 boxes, boy and girl. There's everything in between, and there are different types of families. And the kids are old enough to learn about that and to be accepting of each other's differences.
Now, many of you are well aware of this occurring in classrooms, and so many people are under the impression that it's just the evolution of humanity, and they're doing the right thing. They're opening horizons for children. But let me explain something to you. This sudden explosion is by design, and the people behind it are the same people that are behind everything else. The creation of Israel, the oil wars, the Middle East, everything else. It shouldn't be a surprise whatsoever at all. Here, James Corbett explains this much better than I ever could.
As every would-be ruler throughout history has realized, society has to be transformed from the ground up. Americans in the 19th century still prized education and intellectual pursuits, with the 1840 census finding unsurprisingly that the United States, a nation that had been mobilized by tracts like Thomas Paine's remarkably popular Common Sense, was a nation of readers with a remarkable 93% to 100% literacy rate. Before the first compulsory schooling laws in Massachusetts in 1852, education was private and decentralized, and as a result, classical education, including study of Greek and Latin and a solid grounding in history and science, was widespread. But a nation of individuals who could think for themselves was anathema to the monopolists. The oligarchs needed a mass of obedient workers, an entire class of people whose intellect was developed just enough to prepare them for lives of drudgery in a factory. Into the midst stepped John D. Rockefeller with his first great act of public charity. the establishment of the University of Chicago. He was aided in this task by Frederick Taylor Gates, a Baptist minister that Rockefeller befriended in 1889 and who would go on to be John Dee's most trusted philanthropic advisor. Gates would go on to write a short tract, The Country School of Tomorrow, that laid out the Rockefeller plan for education. In our dream, we have limitless resources, and the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hand. The present educational conventions fade from our minds, and, unhampered by tradition, we work our own goodwill upon a grateful and responsive folk. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers, or men of learning or science. We are not to raise up from among them authors, orators, poets, or men of letters. We shall not search for embryo great artists, painters, musicians, nor will we cherish even the humbler ambition to raise up from among them lawyers, doctors, preachers, politicians, statesmen, of whom we now have ample supply. Although Rockefeller's resources weren't exactly limitless, they might as well have been. In 1902, he established the General Education Board to help implement Gates's vision for the country school of tomorrow with a staggering $180 million endowment. The Rockefeller influence on education was felt almost immediately, and it was amplified by help from fellow monopolists of the era who were approaching the topic of philanthropy from the same angle. Although best known as a steel magnate, Andrew Carnegie's fortune started on the railroads transporting Rockefeller's Standard Oil around the country, and was greatly magnified by a lucrative investment in property near Oil Creek that provided steady, profitable oil sales. In 1905, he established the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching, a tax-free foundation through which Carnegie and his appointees could direct the development of the education system in the United States and, eventually, worldwide. In 1910, Rockefeller followed suit by establishing the Rockefeller Foundation, which became the tax-free umbrella organization for his philanthropic ambitions. As the Reese Committee, a congressional investigation into the activities of these tax-free foundations in the 1950s, discovered, it wasn't long before Carnegie's endowment approached Rockefeller's foundation with a proposal to cooperate on their shared desire to transform the American education system in their own image. Norman Dodd, the director of research for the congressional committee who was granted access to the Carnegie Endowment's board minutes, explains.
So they approach the Rockefeller Foundation with the suggestion that that portion of education which could be considered domestic be handled by the Rockefeller Foundation, and that portion which is international should be handled by the endowment. And they then decide that the key to the success of these two operations lay in an alteration of the teaching of American history. So they approach four of the then most prominent teachers of American history in the country, people like Charles and Mary Bird, and their suggestion to them is, will they alter the manner in which they present this subject, and they get turned down flat. So they then decide that it is necessary for them to do, as they say, build our own stable of historians. And then they approach the Guggenheim Foundation, which specializes in fellowships, and say, when we find young men in the process of studying for doctorates in the field of American history, and we feel that they are the right caliber, will you grant them fellowships on our say-so? And the answer is yes.
Now that you understand a little tiny bit about who's behind absolutely everything, you can see why school has suddenly made this a top priority, that suddenly there isn't just male and female, the two God-appointed sexes, man and woman. There's everything in between, as this teacher was explaining that she teaches to her 6- and 7-year-old children. The same people that are behind everything, poverty, weather control, wars, politics, are also the same people that started, funded, and drive the education system in America. Why do you think the elites send their children to private schools while your kids are subjected to this stuff. And if you raise a hand, if you say anything, if you quote the Bible, you are quickly labeled intolerant, racist, anti Semite, or anything else. These same people are behind the green movement. These same people are behind global warming. These same people are behind the funding for David Keith in Harvard University. Why do you think when a normally well-adjusted child goes into college, suddenly they come out with an arrogant and incorrect view of the world? Richie from Boston. Links to everything you've seen will be in the description. And I'm out.